You have a lot of different methods in terms of getting Kubernetes up and running in today's world. You have managed Kubernetes services like AKS or EKS or Gkey. You can do it even locally with Docker Desktop or Minikube or Kind. And you also have some bootstrap solutions for on-prem or virtualized environments like kubeadm. But what we're now seeing, and it's been around for a bit, it's not, completely new, just now it came out. But what we're seeing is Talos Linux, and Talos Linux is a Linux distribution that's literally made for Kubernetes. That's it. It is only made to run Kubernetes, which is awesome. So that's what we're going to take a look at in this video. I'm going to show you how to get it up and running in a virtualized environment. All right, so first things first, you're going to want to have some type of virtualized environment. If you don't, and you go to the talos.dev website, you can see there is a configuration that you can use to get Talos up and running within your environment via Docker. But for a production-like environment, you're going to want some type of hypervisor like Proxmox or something else. And in this case, I'm using Proxmox, but regardless of what your hypervisor is, it doesn't matter. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a VM, okay? And I'm going to say Talos CP01. I already have them created, but I haven't configured them or anything. I just have them running here so we didn't have to waste any time. And then you're going to want to choose your Talos OS. And how do you get that? Well, if you go ahead and just run this curl here, what it's going to do is it's going to download the latest 1.7.5 Metal ISO. Okay, and this is able to run in a virtualized environment. Okay, so once you do that, choose your ISO, system, disk. You can keep it at 32 gigs, that's fine. CPU, you're going to want to bump it up to 2 cores, and memory, maybe 3,000 megabytes, should be totally fine just for testing and demo purposes. Okay, now once you do that, your VM is going to get up and running, and then when you hit it from the console, it's literally just this. This is all you see. It's just for Kubernetes. You're not going in and running any commands or anything of that sort. It's literally just prepared for Kubernetes. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with the worker node. I'm going to click start here. I should be able to open up this console, Talos. And it's just going to go through, do some prerequisite setup and configuration. And that's it. Just like that, it pops up. There's really nothing that you have to do at the VM level. But what we have to do is set up the configuration at the node level. Okay. So worker node 1.99, control plane 1.19. So now let's head over to VS Code. Okay. So we got the ISO downloaded, of course. We're going to want to generate the Talos configuration via the control plane. Okay, so again, if I come back here, 1.19. So I'm going to do 192.168.1.19. I'm going to copy this. Oh, you're also going to need the Talos CTL as well. So before we forget to do that, let me just head back over to the web browser here and you can see it regardless of where you're running. Like I'm on a Mac, so I use Brew, but you can just go ahead and just curl down the ISO as well. Okay, so we're going to generate this configuration and it's going to output to this out directory, right? So as you can see, nothing here right now except the setup that we're looking at. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to generate that. All right, so we see 3 files, the config, the worker.yaml, and the control plane.yaml, right? And then if we open these up, you can see this is the configuration for the control plane, okay? And this is what we're gonna use. And then the same thing for the worker node here, we can see the configuration for the worker node, all right? So now what we're gonna do is we are going to configure the control plane IP. We're gonna export that as a variable. And then we're going to apply the configuration to our virtual machine. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. Boom. We don't see any output here yet, so don't worry about that. Next, we're going to go to the worker node 1.99. So let's go ahead and just copy this. We'll do 1.99. Get this environment variable for the worker node. And then do the configuration for the worker node. All right, boom. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to set the API server config, right? And that configuration is, of course, what we saw here. See that Talos configuration, okay? And then we're going to specify the config endpoint and the config node. This is going to be the control plane. All right. Then we're going to bootstrap etcd. And then we can pull down the config. So we're going to use talosctl kubeconfig. We're going to pull down the config locally. We should see, yep, kubeconfig right here. And then if we run get nodes against this kubeconfig, actually, before we do that, we may have to give it a few more minutes here. Notice how it is going through and doing the configuration. It does take a minute or so. We can see connectivity is okay. The kubelet is healthy. Kubernetes version 1.31 is running. Again, it's just going through and doing some configurations here. So we'll go ahead and we'll wait. Oh, the API server just came up. We saw that. So yeah, we're going to give it a few more minutes here. And also really quick, while the control plane is doing its thing, the worker node is actually good to go. So the kubelet is healthy. Sage is running. The ready status is true, which we're going to take a look at in a second. Yep, and now the control plane is actually up and running as well. So let's head back to VS Code, and we will run the same thing. kubectl get nodes. All right, and boom, we can see the ready status here. And just to confirm, everything is running as expected. We can run a kubectl get pods against the namespace, and everything is running as expected. Now, one thing that I do want to point out, Flannel is the chosen CNI, okay? Now, as it stands right now, Flannel does not work with network policies, okay? So if you're thinking about network policies, you will just have to keep that in mind there, okay? But that is how you can get your Talos environment up and running. And again, if we just go back to the VMs here, we can see everything is in healthy status, which is great for the control plane and for the worker node.